film, popular culture, and recent politics.
Now, in 1985, we got the idea to put up 2 posters in the streets of New York about the state of marginalized artists in the New York art world. It wasn't a pretty picture. But we had a new idea to twist an issue around and present it in a way that it hasn't been seen before. A new way to construct political art. And the Guerrilla Girls were born, an anonymous bunch of artists who wear gorilla masks in public and take the names of dead women artists as pseudonyms, like Zubaydah Ava.
Over 55 individuals have been members of the Guerrilla Girls over the years. Some were members for just weeks, some for decades, and others have been lifers like myself. And to be honest, a few just came for a meeting. We've always been diverse in age, sexual orientation, class. We're from many ethnic backgrounds, including South Asian, Asian, African American, Latina, Europe, etc. And we've had cis and transgender members from the very beginning.
Now, we started sneaking around in the middle of the night in New York and putting up posters all over the streets that revealed the truth about discrimination in the New York art world. By the way, putting up a poster on a U.S. mailbox is a federal offense, so don't do that.
Now, we started out doing it not as an art strategy or as any kind of a career move. We were just pissed off. But the posters caught everyone's attention, and pretty soon people on the street were starting to talk about the issues that we were interested in. Now, how did we get back there? We went backwards. Hold on, here we go. One more. Now, what we were complaining about was not that there wasn't 50% this and 50% that, or even 13%. This is how bad things really were. 0, 0, 1, 0.
And it was even harder for women of color, so we did this intersectional poster. Only 4 galleries in New York show black women. Only 1 shows more than 1.
Now, a few years after we did this series of posters, sort of naming names and calling out people in the art world that we thought were responsible for a kind of institutional sexism and racism, we were invited to do a billboard in Lower Manhattan to try out this kind of crazy voice that we had developed on a larger audience. So one Sunday afternoon, we went to the Metropolitan Museum to conduct what we affectionately came to know to call the Looney Count. And what was that, the Looney Count? We counted naked males and naked females in the artworks just to see what it might tell. Well, as we went through the classical sculpture galleries, to our great surprise, almost all the naked figures were male. When we went through the early Christian galleries, we couldn't find any flesh at all. And this is a test for the art historians in the group. When we went through the Renaissance and Baroque galleries, what was the only fully frontal naked figure we could find?
Baby Jesus.
The baby Jesus. And it was only when we got to the 19th century, that early modern period when sex replaces religion as the major preoccupation of European painters, did we get our statistic. And here's what we did with it. We appropriated the Odalisque from Ang, and we had her ask the crazy question. Do women have to be naked to get into the Metropolitan Museum? And of course, we had to back it up with the statistics. Less than 5% of the artists in the modern art section are women, but 85% of the nudes are female.
Our first posters led to hundreds of others, plus street actions, billboards, stickers, and books.
And we never thought that so many years, 30 years later, we, the agitating outsiders, would actually be invited to show our work inside of the very institutions that we criticized. We were at the Museum of Modern Art. Of course, they never gave us a show or anything. They just asked us to be on a panel. Here we are at Tate Modern, where actually we did a project last fall. Here we are in front of the Prado, hawking feminism.
We never dreamed that we would do large-scale street projects in, for example, Rotterdam, Mexico City, Istanbul, Athens, and Shanghai.
At a major retrospective of our work, there we are in Shanghai. A major retrospective of our work was in Bilbao 2 years ago. Here's a slide of it. And right now, you can actually see a large, this is the show as it moved to Madrid. And a large selection of our work is right now in the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis. And right now, we also have a project at the Whitechapel Gallery in London, where we sent 400 letters out to museum directors asking the question, is it even worse in Europe? And the show is an exhibition of the responses they sent back to us, sort of telling the story of diversity in Europe in their very many words.
Now, when we started this, we had no idea that our work would cause all hell to break loose. We were surprised, but thrilled that we ignited this major crisis of conscience about diversity in the art world, a subject most museums, collectors, and critics had ignored and denied for a long, long time. Now it's a no-brainer. You cannot tell the story of a culture without all of the nuances in it.
You know, we've been really, really lucky to be able to do all this work. And we're so grateful to people all over the world, ages 8 to 80, who write to us every week telling us that we've actually inspired them to their own crazy kind of activism.
And we'd love to think that our work has made a big difference in the art world, but old habits die hard, and some museums are still lagging behind. We went back to the Met a couple of years ago to see if anything had gotten better. We were sure it had, but this is what we found.
You're women artists, and we're naked males. Is this the progress we have to settle for?
And then last year, when we celebrated our 30th birthday, we revisited 2 of our earliest posters again to see how much progress we made. This is what we found.
You know, takes a minute to read these things. Anyway, we've been complaining about discrimination in the art world for a long time. But in the last few years, we've been really alarmed by something else, and that's the rise of big money in art. In the United States, most museums are funded and overseen, as you well know, by wealthy art collectors, the 1% of the 1%.
And now it doesn't take a genius to realize that this system is ripe for corruption. Billionaire collectors sit on the board of directors of museums and influence what museums exhibit and collect. They get museums to purchase work by artists they already own, increasing the value of their personal collections. This is American capitalism at its finest.
Our favorite example of how board members benefit from their positions, for example, collector Giuseppe Panza was paid $11 million back in the 90s for selling part of his art collection to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles at the same time he was on the board of directors. That very year, he sold other pieces from his collection to the Guggenheim for a little bit more money, for $30 million.
At the Metropolitan, big money is more important than free speech. The Met, for those of you who visited, they recently accepted $65 million from the ultra-right-wing Koch brothers, who spent even more than that trying to undermine U.S. elections. What did the Met do after getting their dirty money? They held a big party, then called in the cops to arrest a group of artists who protested outside by projecting this image onto the facade of the museum.
It was really about the Koch brothers being climate deniers. Now, thinking about billionaires in art, today there are hundreds of collectors all over the world, all over the world, in Asia, in the United States, in Europe, who invest in art and then they create their very own private museums, which, gives them an opportunity to avoid all kinds of taxes, and it actually controls culture. They can control the products of culture. Now, here's a banner that we did this past summer It's on the side of the Museum Ludwig in Cologne. And it explains this new kind of museum. Now, this is in German, so here it is translated into English. The advantages of owning your own art museum.
You're the boss. You call the shots, just like in your business.
You get to decide what art the museum collects and exhibits under the influence, of course, of a cartel of multinational galleries and auction houses who manipulate and define today's art market.
At fancy parties, art fairs, and biennales, everyone sucks up to you and your wallet.
Your huge donations get you huge tax breaks. All the while, people think you're an incredibly generous philanthropist.
If you make the mistake of hiring progressive, inclusive directors, curators, and staff, you can just fire them.
Now, the question we ask about this, it's not about philanthropy or generosity. It's a question of, do these museums, where all the decisions are made by a small handful of very homogeneous people, can those museums really tell us the history of art, or do they tell us the history of wealth and power?
Along with this thinking, here's a stealth campaign we did in 2015 in New York to celebrate our 30th anniversary. We put up stickers about income inequality, calling out super rich who control art.
And one of them, of course, reads, "Dear art collector, collecting art is so expensive, even for billionaires. We completely understand why you can't afford to pay your employees a living wage."
We also did a stealth projection on the facade of the Whitney Museum in New York with the help of the Illuminator Collective. 22 Productions made a great video of this collaboration, and we're going to end by showing you that.
Up, please, son.
The art world sucks. The super rich are controlling the museums, sitting on the boards. Power is being centralized into these few rich people. Like, it's really about the 1%.
Unfortunately, our world right now appears to be about money and about the production of luxury items. Billionaires are making more and more and more.
And their taste controls which artists get the big bucks and get the opportunities and get the shows. We're planning to sneak around New York with the Illuminator. So we'll be starting out in Chelsea, and we hope to then go to the Whitney.
So we have this idea to do something we could do really fast around New York and put these stickers up. Some of the stickers are about art galleries, about billionaires, billionaire collectors, and about museums. So we wanted to pick them up where they belong, all the big galleries, all the museums, and get them out to people, especially so they could do the same thing. And it seemed like a great idea. Call the people together, put the word out, see who comes, and just run around the streets and get these things out and bother people.
It's going to be a Saturday in Chelsea. People walking around, feeling really good about having seen all this inspiring art. And all of a sudden, they're going to see the wall above start talking to them. And it's going to say, "Dear art collector, we completely get it. Collecting art is so expensive. We really understand why you can't afford to pay all your employees a living wage." The wall is going to talk to them.
Every time we put something up, people would go bananas. Some people would love it, some people would hate it. So we would sort of work in that space. It's really very productive to provoke people to think about things. And we discovered early on that if you could make someone who disagreed with you laugh, you have a hook inside their brain. Once you were in there, you just might be able to change their minds about things.
Okay, thank you.
because I knew that the Guerrilla Girls all took names of dead artists. She was the first Pakistani artist after 1947 when Pakistan was declared a country, first female artist. So I think that's very interesting.
Thank you for doing your homework.
I'm an art historian. So we're now going to have our panel, and I am going to introduce the moderator, and the moderator is going to introduce her panelists. The moderator is Katie Hollander. We're thrilled to have Katie here. Katie is the Executive Director of Creative Time, an amazing organization in New York City that supports contemporary artists and does a lot of social activism and arts and social justice. Katie has worked in the nonprofit community for over 20 years, and she's been an executive and development director. She's done strategic planning. She's done all kinds of things. One of the things, as Katie says in her biography, that she launched her career at the College Art Association, where she started as the assistant to the executive director 25 years ago, something like that. And that person was me. So that was it's really exciting to see how she's prospered and done such amazing work in her career. She's been at Creative Time for the past 8 years. She was the deputy director, and then she became the executive director. And she's done amazing work. She was also the executive director of Art Table, which is an organization for professional women in the arts. So, Katie Hollander.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm really thrilled to be here, and thank you, Susan, for inviting me to moderate this panel. I think we're going to have a lively conversation. As Susan shared, she was pretty much my first boss, and so I will also give you a little secret. Tonight is my first night moderating a panel, and it's only your first boss that can twist your arm into doing such a thing. So I hope you will bear with me as I kind of, get tips from the audience that I should hold the mic closer. Is that better? Good. And back 25 years ago when Susan and I first started working together, I didn't need these, that's for sure, and I certainly had fewer gray hairs, if any at all. But I really think that this is a great evening. I appreciate the Bruce for taking on this conversation, one that feels more pressing than ever, and certainly hearing the Guerrilla Girls' remarks and sharing their research just shows you potentially how little progress has really been made. So I'm going to kick things off by introducing our esteemed panelists, and I will start with Hillary Harkness. Hillary is there. Hillary is featured in the exhibition, Her Crowd, with the work Blue Nude. She has been represented by the Mary Boone Gallery in New York City since 2003, is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, where she studied biochemistry and art, and holds a Master's of Fine Arts from the Yale University School of Art. Next is Sandra Joyce. Sandra, thank you, received an A.B. in philosophy from Smith College, an MBA from NYU Stern School, and attended Christie's Fine Art and Decorative Arts course, London. Presently, Sandra serves on the boards of the Metropolitan Opera Guild, Masters Voices, and Cameron Center for Music and the Arts. Together and individually, her and her husband have collected fine art and decorative art since 1980s. Next is Mia Loffer. Mia, who is a curator of the project and is a PhD candidate at Washington University in St. Louis, where she specializes in modern European and contemporary art. She is currently working on her dissertation about modern art collecting and identity politics. She is the co-curator of Her Crowd, which she organized while working as the Grunberg Resident Fellow at the Bruce Museum last year. And Kristen Tierney. Kristen is the owner of Kristen Tierney Gallery, a contemporary art gallery in the heart of New York's Chelsea Gallery District. The gallery is committed to the development and support of both established and emerging artists. The International Exhibition Program emphasizes critical theory and art history with an interest in under-recognized artists and art movements of the 20th and 21st century. So, and Kristen also is just, so that for transparency's sake, right? We should, Kristen was also a colleague at College Art Association, so it's fun to be here with, yes, it all comes back together, family and friends. Okay, so I'm gonna jump in. So I think that, I need to start with probably the elephant in the room, which is the election. And this particular exhibition, as well as many in this past year, really looked at women artists. And I think Mia refers to this in her essay, and kind of this idea of the Year of Women. So we saw it with the Rubel's collection in Miami. They had an exhibition called No Man's Land. Obviously, there are several individual women who have exhibitions now up at Piccolotti Reese at the New Museum, Agnes Martin at the Guggenheim. The Brooklyn Museum even launched kind of that Year of the Women theme pre-election. So do you think that the Hillary being our first woman candidate was the catalyst for that? Or is it just coincidence that women seem to be at the forefront of many museum exhibitions this last year? And Mia, do you want to take that since you wrote the essay?
Sure. Hello, can you hear me? I think the question of women and checking in with where women are in the art world, unfortunately, kind of ebbs and flows in the popular consciousness. It became a hot topic of conversation around 2007, and now it's a hot topic of conversation again. And so if there's a correlation, I definitely think it's the art world responding to Hillary. Hillary has been the presumptive nominee for the Democrats for quite some time. So yeah, I think there's a way that people have been able to see her coming up even before she announced her candidacy, to be thinking that this 2016 might be our year. And so yeah, I think that that's probably something that people have been thinking about and possibly, maybe unintentionally or subconsciously, spearheaded that kind of renewed interest.
Anybody else want to add?
I think I'm not so optimistic. First of all, we've just experienced a huge backlash, against not just women, but anyone who doesn't sort of fit the establishment idea of power. And that being said, yes, it's hard to do an exhibition or have a collection now without women involved, included. As a matter of fact, it gets, if you don't include women artists in a survey show, well, you get trashed. But it's not just women, it's about diversity, not just women. It's about diversity. And if you look behind the statistics, past the group shows to solo shows, I think you'll find the same bad statistics. They're slightly better than they were 30 years ago. And while women and artists of color are needed to sort of, make the art world look fair, if you look at the power, at the money that's being spent in the art world, it is almost all being spent on the work of white women. Some of the statistics that we left out tonight, which we include in the larger presentations, is the fact that the highest price ever paid for an artwork by a woman artist, Yadu Kusama, is like 17% of the highest price paid for a male, Jeff Koons. So until women have equal means of production, and also artists of color have equal means of production, there will be kind of window dressings to make the art world look like it's liberal. I think you have to scratch the surface of art as investment, as an instrument of capitalism, to realize that, we're being used to make the system look good. But in fact, art has become, I question whether it really tells the story of our culture, or does it really, is it a place to park a lot of money and treat as an investment? So I'm a little more, that's too long an answer, but let's all chew on that a bit.
Right, so you're kind of acknowledging that this past year there has been an effort to highlight women artists, but it's both of you actually kind of reference it as a bit of tokenism, right? Every few years we look at women. This is a period of time when, with the election, women are kind of, or a particular woman was at the center of media attention.
I guess we can't really talk about women without being diverse in a larger sense. It's not just women, it's women artists of color.
Sure, and we can expand upon that. Obviously, the exhibition, her crowd is look at women artists in this community, and I think that it goes without saying that also, in terms of collecting and museums, that it's not just women, but diversity of people of color. But just to kind of tag on to that question, I guess, do you think, and Kristen, I'll give this one to you, do you think that now that we've had this moment where women artists have been a little bit highlighted in this past year, that, and also with this current election, that maybe we will see less women in the forefront and kind of return back to what some would consider a period of normalcy with more men being represented?
Period of normalcy? This one? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't know what the Guggenheim's planning to do, but in the art market, I don't think that I don't think that 2017 is going to have less women because of what happened in the elections. I mean, if anything, people are more conscious of that, and some of the issues of gender inequity and other forms of inequity that have been brought to the fore and that have been a big part of the discussions over the course of this year will continue to be part of the discussions in Chelsea. And I mean, I recognize that we are all, at the end of the day, instruments of capitalism to some extent. A great many of the galleries in Chelsea, and certainly on the Lower East Side, are not operating in the speculative sphere. And the support that they seek to provide to artists and the cultivation of artists comes from a different motivation, or has different degrees of motivation. And I think that motivation is part of the reason that this interest and this concern with gender equity and striving for greater gender equity in the field will continue to be a topic of discussion.
So both of you guys, and obviously Mia, you talk a little bit about this, the market, and give a little bit of a behind the scenes, and the Girl and Girls focus on their talk about this as well, right? The collector and how that is very much a driving force within the museum community. And so you kind of took that, tried to unveil a little bit of what happens in the art world. So as a point of reference, maybe each of you can share a little behind the scenes in relationship to this topic and how you think about it. And I'll start with you, Mia, as a museum curator and a emerging art historian that often works years in museums that often work years in advance on an exhibition. How do you think about equity and the future of exhibitions, both with individual and group shows? And what about the collection itself?
Well, as you said, museum shows are planned often years and years in advance. This one was actually kind of a quick turnover. It was just a year from when we started. Ken and I, my co-curator, Ken Silver, and I started really thinking about this when it opened. And so you really, I do find that, particularly because my interest starts around 1860. I like to think that I can write about anything 1860 to the present day. And so I do, as I'm thinking about art history and particular artists, I do like to think about it in the long, sort of the long game, and I think about that in the past and projecting into the future. And so when I'm thinking about what artists I want to feature in an exhibition, what kind of exhibitions I want to pitch, they often do engage with sort of themes that I think are resonant and sort of classic, that are going to appeal today and in 5 years, that's how long it takes. And people who I really think are going to last for the long term. In terms of behind the scenes, little tidbit, particularly because the Guerrilla Girls brought up bringing up this idea of intersectionality and the idea that it's not just about gender, it's about race and religion and class and so many different kinds of diversity that you can, and gender and sexuality. When Ken and I first decided that we were going to focus on women artists, that was going to be the sort of framing device for this show, one of the questions that I had many concerns, and I had a whole list of things that I said, if we're going to do this, I want to do it right, I want to do it well. Because I think we can all agree that really bad only women shows are very frustrating. So I had a whole list of concerns that I wanted to address. And one of them was, I don't know if you're all familiar with this phrase, but feminism is for white girls idea. And I wanted to make sure that it went beyond that it really showed women as a very diverse, complicated mix of people, and we're half the people in this world. So there's like a lot of diversity in there. And then one of the sort of problems that I had is I really wanted the show to be diverse, and I wanted it to show a wide range of female experiences. But I didn't want to foreground that. I mean, I didn't want to start thinking about it as, well, we have all these Christian artists, so let's find a Jewish artist, like sort of crowbar people in there, not based on their art, and because I think that sort of degrades things, right? You're only in here because you're a Jewish artist, whatever. And so that was one of the sort of balancing acts that we had to navigate. We went in thinking, okay, we want the work to be diverse, but we want to show the highest quality work. And so we sort of, how we kind of navigated that was we tended to put the art first, and we just included the work that we thought was the best and most important and could speak to each other. And then every once in a while we would check in and sort of think about it. Is this racially diverse? Is this, are we thinking about a lot of different themes and issues, and are we looking at a lot of different media and the particular artist's identity and the identities that the artist's work we're talking about? And so we would sort of go between these phases of sort of turning a blind eye to those things and really letting the individual objects determine whether or not they were in the show, and then every once in a while checking in. It's a tricky question about whether or not you let your sort of politics and your hopes for diversity determine what goes in the show, and whether or not you sort of just say, I'm going to let the chips fall where they may, and hopefully it's just not a bunch of middle-class white ladies at the end of the day. But that was something that Ken and I really, we tried to figure out, and I hope that we were successful, but I think it's a complicated question to navigate.
Sandra, do you want to respond to that, how you think about and build your collection, and